Simcha, the celebration of life.
Shalom, Molo, Sawubona, hello and welcome to Simcha, a celebration of life. I'm your host, Jared Epstein. In today's show, we continue our series on signs and symbols. We introduce a new master's program in Jewish education, and we continue our adventure in wellness with Dr. Jonathan Mach. Throughout the ages, song and dance have always played a symbolic role within Judaism, whether through prayer, celebration, or national unity. Today, Batya Bricker elaborates further in her series of signs and symbols.
Today we're going to talk about songs that have become not just a means of expression, but symbolism in of themselves. Symbolic songs are traditionally national anthems. And a national anthem is something that has become a song that has come to represent the vision, the values, the identity of a nation, of a people. So let's start with Hatikva. Hatikva is the national anthem of Israel. It is 2 paragraphs, very short, that originally came from a poem by Naftali Hertz Imber called Tikvatenu, Our Hope. Hatikva is the hope, and his poem was a 9-stanza poem called Tikvatenu, and it wrote about the Jewish yearning to return to its land. He died penniless on the streets of New York. He was an alcoholic. And in the true literary tradition, he sold a poem before he died to pay for his grave, and that was how he was buried. So he died penniless and really quite disgraced, although beloved by the Jewish people. He was later interned in Israel. They took his body to Israel because he became so important. So the words come from Tikvatenu, from his poem, and the melody comes from an old tune called Cart and Horse, a Moldavian folk tune that was brought to Israel by Samuel Cohen, but there were many objections to this. Religious Zionists have a problem that God is not mentioned in the anthem. God is central to Jewish belief and identity, and many feel and felt then that without God being mentioned in the anthem, that was a huge and inexcusable omission. There were others who felt that it was too religious in its expression, and there were others who felt, well, actually it was just depressing. The words are depressing. The words are about hope, and they are serious. Other national anthems capture very different emotion: victory, pride, control over a land. Hatikva, in contrast, is humble, is hopeful, but it's not very jolly, and it's not very confident. And it's interesting to see that tone, because you'll see in all other songs that capture the Jewish people's hearts, that yearning, the longing, the hope is a continuous thread that runs through all of them. The Hora, which is the traditional Jewish dance, did not start off as a Jewish dance at all. The Jewish Hora was choreographed by a man called Baruch Agadati. Baruch Agadati was very interesting because he was a chassid, which means that he looked like a traditional Jew. He would have worn a black cap, he had tzitzit with his strings hanging out, he probably had a beard, probably had stockings with +4s. He looked like a traditional Jew, but he was trained as in classical ballet, which is an interesting combination. Baruch Agadati became the cultural, or one of the cultural icons of the new Zionists. And he designed or choreographed the Hora that was then sung to a variety of songs that expressed this new identity. Hava Nagila, which makes sense because he was a chassid, and Hava Nagila actually comes from an old Hasidic tune, a nigun. The Hasidim would sing without words, so that it was accessible to everybody. That was the Hasidic, and remains the Hasidic philosophy. And so that tune, that nigun, was what inspired his horror and what inspired Hava Nagila. Issachar Maron wrote the words to Tsena Tsena, which means go out, go out. And it describes the girls who would wait for their burly, handsome, strong men, suntanned men, to come back from the field after a heavy day's work of settling the land. It was a socialist, Zionist song. Fascinating, the song was taken up by Pete Seeger, and he was an American folk singer at the time, and it was part of a revival, or an explosion, should I say, of folk songs in America that represented the underdog, that represented a new identity, a new way of being for the world. And Pete Seeger picks the song up, and it becomes one of the hits of America. And why it was important was it because it introduced to American Jews, to the American jury, what the Israeli Jew was about. It set the scene for this self-sufficient, strong Jew who was able to defend himself and was able to flourish, in complete contrast to that victim of slaughter from Kishinev. If this impression to the American Jewish people affected American Jewish activism, it affected the identity of the Jewish people in America, and we know that Jews in America are a strong force to be reckoned with. It changed the identity of the Jewish people in America, not just for Israel, but for America too.
The Academy of Jewish Thought and Learning has introduced an exciting new program called NED, National Education Development Program. NED is the first project in South Africa to drive 21st century Jewish educational leadership, training, and enrichment. We spoke to Rabbi Woodmont and some of the participants who are embarking on a master's degree in Jewish education.
The Academy began about 5 years ago, and within a year of our launch, we had already begun talks with our overseas partners about looking at options for degree programming, because we felt that South Africa, amongst all the major Jewish communities worldwide, is the only one that doesn't have a Jewish university. And it provides an anchor for, or a hothouse perhaps is the better metaphor, for developing thought leaders. And we haven't had something like that. And under a traditional Jewish leadership, we felt that it would be a tremendous advantage for our community to have that space. So we began working 4 years ago with our partners in London to create a program that would fit our needs. And I wanted something that met a couple of criteria. First criterion was that it would be the cheapest in the world, because with the Rand, even though post-December 2017 the Rand's a bit stronger, it's still incredibly demanding. Number two, other master's programs require the students to travel to the particular place where they're learning, either New York or England or Israel. So I wanted something that didn't make that demand, because the type of person that's going to be doing a master's is at a later stage in life, and many of these master's programs require 6 weeks internships or learnerships over there. So we couldn't have that. So that was the second criterion. The third criterion is that we wanted there to be a possibility for people who did not yet have the undergraduate with honors qualifications to substitute for that experience. You have experienced teachers who are superb master teachers, but don't have an honors, maybe they just got a bachelor's. And we wanted that experience to count. Now, of course, the fourth criterion is that it has to be accredited internationally as well. So we worked over that period with the dean and Rabbi Dr. Rafi Zarim, and also with the CEO at that stage, Jason Morantz, to construct the parameters for this program.
I've essentially been an academy student since its inception almost 5 years ago. By profession, I'm a lawyer, and when my eldest child was 2 years old, I decided to give law a break and to actually pursue community work and study further in Jewish issues. And the Academy was the perfect forum for that. And I've done many courses throughout the 5 years. I found them very stimulating, and each one is interesting in its own right. And when the master's course came out, I thought that it would be the next step.
So this program has 4 subspecializations. The first one is focused on strategic leadership within Jewish educational organizations. And that's in general, that's adult education organizations, schools, everything in between. So that's the first subspecialization. The second one is for school teachers. And then you've got a high school or let's say a primary, secondary school focus. Then you've got an experiential education option, which focuses what we call informal education. But it's a hot topic overseas now. You actually get a degree in it. You train, you explore the educational parameters, the differences between formal and informal education, and how to implement. And then finally, for people who occupy rabbinic leadership positions in communities, your rabbis and rebbitzins. Broadly speaking, in our country, one either has in the school system and in the rabbinate, rabbis or rebbitzins that have a lot of experience and have spent time in seminary or in yeshiva, but do not have a degree in education. On the other hand, one then sometimes finds people who are teachers who do have a teaching degree, but do not necessarily have the rabbinic or the Torah education. So this literally is a bridge between the two. As part of our program, the broader program is called NED. It's the National Education Development Program. We've also got industrial psychologists and educational psychologists on our team to consult with schools about leadership development and a broad array of interventions at schools, which some of the schools we're already involved with on that level.
After setting my business and retiring, or being in semi-retirement for a period of time, we've been blessed with grandchildren, and I want to leave something for my grandchildren, a legacy, something that I can leave for them that will help to foster and nurture their Jewish identity, which to my mind is a very, very important element of my life. Now, the masters in that the LSJS through Middlesex is offering starts by offering a basic understanding what traditional Jewish education is and the critical elements that revolve around it. Now, clearly, to my mind, they wouldn't be offering this, and it's my personal view, it's anecdotal, unless there was something that needed attention. You need more professionalism, if I may use that word, more innovation in Jewish education than is current. And that's really where my interest comes through from studying that, hoping to go further than that and to help build greater and more innovative elements in Jewish education than is current.
Firstly, from a Jewish educational perspective, South Africa is different from the States or from Israel or from England. We are different historically, and currently we're in a different space. So there needs to be some place where we can focus on South African needs and experiences thus far. But more broadly, South African Jews are in South Africa, and there's also a great opportunity to explore Jewish educational opportunities in that space as well. So we wanted almost a customization in that sphere. And one thing that was very important to us was that there should be enough emphasis placed on the role of Israel in Jewish identity and therefore in the process of Jewish education. Because in our opinion, worldwide, and definitely in South Africa, for many traditional Jews, Israel is a major part of their Jewish education, not just Jewish religion. Part
of the actual study program is that you have to work with groups. You have to have the interaction, because otherwise, of course, it becomes very cold. It's very isolated. It's not a living thing, and people have different perspectives. You need to engage in that and to hear other people's views on. Because I think this master's is very different. It's not a case of I want to pass a degree. Dr. Kassav, I want to learn more, I want to grow myself.
Our educational strategy is always focused on the teacher as opposed to material, because the teacher is at the coalface of education. And if you look at the budgets that schools and our community puts towards teacher enrichment compared to other areas, for example, curriculum development, and other areas in our Jewish communal life, the ratio is very, very small. It's very small. There's very little that we're putting towards enriching or developing the next generation of educators. But they will be the people who will make or break it. That's number one. Number two, we are buying curricula from overseas that may not necessarily work for us because we have very few people who can develop curricula here internally. We have no one with a PhD in Jewish education in this country. No one. In places like the States, in the top schools, you can't even become a principal unless you've got a PhD. You definitely can't become a regular teacher without a master's. And thirdly, because the teachers are the people at the coalface, if they are not attracted into the space as a viable career option and with a career path, then automatically the more talented are simply going to flock to the other more traditional Jewish occupations. And as their mothers would tell them, why are you going into education? Get a real job. And the long-term damage to our Jewish continuity is massive. So we're focusing on a couple of areas. Number one, trying to work with schools to recognize, and with the broader community, to recognize the need to make this a viable career path, an attractive career path for our talented youngsters, so that we can bring in people who actually have raw talent, number one. Number two, to create the programming such as this that will nurture and hone that raw talent and give them the knowledge and network. And number three, we'd like to create a space which is recognized as vital, which is a brains trust, where we actually invest in creating people who think long-term, about the future of our community educationally, and of course you can apply that in other areas. Our aim is within 5 years to have PhDs, so we're going to extend it beyond the masters to the PhD level, where we have people who are not just qualified but capable, deep thinkers who can contribute with their knowledge and international exposure to the development of our community.
Continuing with our series of Adventure in Wellness, Dr. Jonathan Mach shares with us his knowledge and insights into the workings of the brain and how we can build resilience in the digital age through the use of mindfulness and meditation.
Some people say that the biggest war at the moment is the war for our attention. There are so many forces that want our attention. Social media, Facebook, Snapchat, Instagram, the politician, your spouse, your children. Everybody wants your attention. And what is actually happening is that we're actually not paying attention because we're going from one person to another, one activity to another. We go from Facebook, we're looking for likes, we do an Instagram, then the phone rings and we look at an SMS, an email, and so it goes on. So what is actually happening is that a lot of us are becoming attention deficit. We're not really paying attention. And that is causing a whole series of problems. In fact, if you look at some statistics, for example, teenagers in America, they say that drug use and pregnancy, teenage pregnancy, is down. But loneliness and depression is up because these kids are now linking with other people through their devices. What is actually starting to happen, I notice, is that there's a pushback against this war of attention to non-technological activities, for example, meditation. And the most popular form of meditation now is called mindfulness. First of all, what is meditation? And then is mindfulness meditation? meditation is really a simple definition. It's focused attention. So whatever you decide to pay attention to, whether it's your breath or your left foot or the food you're eating, that is meditation. Meditation is not necessarily going to India and under a mountain and on top of a mountain and under a tree. No, you can decide to meditate at any point in the day. Mindfulness meditation is really focused attention on the present. That's what it really is, on purpose, on the present, without judging. So whatever comes up, if I hear a bird tweeting, that's what I'm being mindful about. If I have a cramp in my leg, that is what is happening right now. So what mindfulness meditation is regaining that ability to pay attention and to hold your attention as opposed to being distracted. So mindfulness is paying attention to what is happening right now. What happens with a lot of people, and this causes a lot of suffering, is that people are caught up in their thinking. So the major distractor internally is thinking about the past or the future. And we get caught up in the drama of the past and the future. So mindfulness is really saying, what is happening to you right now, including your thoughts. So you decenter yourself, you pull back, and you can say, I'm thinking about the ice cream I had this morning, or the appointment I've got at 6 o'clock. So what really mindfulness meditation is to make you more present. And what is fascinating is if you look at what's happening to the brain when you are more mindful, it is a completely different network to when your mind is wandering into the past and the future. You use your life as your curriculum for mindfulness. What we can do, if you want to, is you can go for a walk. You can go for a walk in nature, and you can bring all your sensory to a silent walk, for example. So you can look up at the clouds. You can hear a bird. You can feel the breath of air against your face. You can smell what is in the air. And in fact, you can taste on your tongue. So walking in nature, to me, is one of the best ways to practice mindfulness. There are people that prefer to sit and close their eyes and watch their breath. And that I think is good, but I don't think it's necessarily sufficient. I really think that we've got a wonderful world that we can pay attention to. I like to go and stand and look up into the sky and cloud watch. When I look up at the clouds, what one notices, if you're paying attention and concentrating, that all clouds are moving. They're never the same. And there's a very powerful lesson at two levels. One is that when the clouds move, behind it is blue sky. Two, nothing is ever permanent. And these are important lessons for mindfulness.
Well, that's all we have for this week's episode of Simcha, a celebration of life. As always, we'd love to hear from you, so please send us a Facebook message at Spirit Sister Productions. From me, Jared Epstein, and the Simcha team, we wish you a week of fun, learning, and wellness.